Good morning. Thought I'd show you a few things that I picked up last weekend and talk to you a little bit about doing some radio repairs and building your shop on the cheap. As some of you may or may not know, I'm fairly frugal. I like looking for a good deal. Yes, sometimes that comes back to haunt me where I pick up something that probably shouldn't have because it ended up costing me more than I had bought something new. In any event, I had a very nice weekend last week. I went to a consignment sale and I picked up something there. And then I went to the Mid-Atlantic Antique Radio monthly meeting. They have a flea market, they have an educational event, and then they have an auction, and I picked up a bunch of things there. So let's start there. The first thing I have here is I entered the flea market. And this is a Heathkit IG42 signal generator. And what's neat about this is, if you look at this label over here, let me see if I can focus in on that. It is from Alaska, so wherever this came from, it went from Alaska to Virginia. So it's in very good shape. I have not opened it up yet. Looking online, this is a, the dial works here. Everything seems to turn on and off. It's got a little bit of dirt. And looking out there, one, there is no restore video out there on YouTube that I can find, so we're going to do that. And two, as I'm looking at, picking up the schematics and all, what I did find was something very interesting, where someone had taken this, made a few small modifications to it, and made it into an AM transmitter for their home. And that I thought might be a neat project to do. I'm going to restore it first, and there's a selenium rectifier, which I've never done before. I didn't know much about, so I got to learn a little bit about that. Other than someone said you don't want to blow that up because the smell is terrible. So that was kind of neat. As I entered the flea market, somebody was looking at throwing this in the auction. I picked this up for $10. I was probably going to go for $5, but I ended up getting it for $10. I thought it was in fairly good shape and make a nice little project. The next thing that happened that day is they had their educational. And their educational session talked about building a technical library. And I thought this was neat, that these are guys who have been in the hobby for 30 or 40 years, and what books they look at. And what was interesting is it wasn't a lot of brand new books. It was very old books from the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. They handed out some very nice pages, and I will add a link to this video when they post these out on the web, because they go into the history of radio, radio servicing, classic radio textbooks, more modern textbooks, radio manufacturers, radios beginning, types of radios, and tubes. And some of them, for instance, they mentioned there's a great series on learning electronics the Navy put out there. And they mentioned, here's some places, if you ever see these books, pick them up. Well, I Googled that and found out the PDFs are out there for free. So once we get this, I'm going to try to look some of these up and see how many of these are in the public domain. So that was the educational section. Now, you register, and I got a little number here, and they have a auction. Now, the auction probably had, I don't know, maybe 150 to 200 items there. And so there's a period of time where you can go around and you write down maybe what you're interested in there. And one of the things that I have just put all my capacitors together and labeled them and built some nice little shelves. And I know Mossack over on his, hope I'm pronouncing that, Doug, I believe, on his station talked about how he was doing this, and he had ordered a few of these cases from Amazon. Well, the first thing that came up in this video is I'm doing my resistors now, and these little containers here, they're all in very good shape. This one in the back that I'll be showing here in a second is actually from Montgomery Ward's. It's made out of metal. These are plastic, but they're all in good shape. I'll talk a little bit more about the one, but that has a couple of broken, like the little pieces of plastic here are broken, but they all had all their pieces of plastic. And I spent $11 and got 1, 2, 3, 4 of these things. I probably should have bought a couple more, but I'm kind of like I felt a little bit greedy. And what was nice is once I bought them, and I'll talk a little bit about what's in them in a second. Once I bought them, one of the members came around with plastic wrap and helped me wrap all these, so as I transported them home, each of them would not come apart. Now, unfortunately, as I was walking out to the garage, I dropped this one and a few pieces came out of here. So this one had a little bit of everything in it. There's capacitors, I probably should take this off, some resistors in here. There are literally parts I don't know what they are. 1.2 to 1.4K, different resistors here. Of course, I'm going to have to test these, and as John from Arkansas has often told me, be careful of the capacitors there, because you don't know what the history of them is. I do know, and there's probably 20 different parts bins at this one. This was an estate sale, and this was his working parts, and I think the person passed away about 6 months ago. So here's one. There are parts in here that I'm probably going to have to ask to how to identify, like these little resistors here. I think a little pot resistors here. See if we can do a little bit of a close-up there. And I think I got a bunch of real nice tools, parts here. This one included whole bunch of I think these are transistors, Motorola transistors. Now, I may or may not keep these parts and may reuse some of these trays. When each of these is $1, $2, $2, and $6, buying this little case alone is $10 to $15 in the store. And I think that each of these, we got PNP transistors, NPN transistors. This one caught my eye because one, it had a lot of empty ones. Diodes, I imagine those are rectifiers, 24 volt DPs, PNP powers, UHFs. This one had a lot of empty, there's tons of transistors in it, IC chips, things I'm probably not into right yet. But I may be in the future. Metric conversion chart. I haven't even gone through everything here yet to see what's in here. I really wanted a few more empty drawers. And this one fits on top of this one over here. So the final one I got is this large one here. And these are resistors. Now, I have a very large box of resistors downstairs. And I was sitting there going, I have to learn how to read all these, which isn't a bad thing, but I was going to have to sort them, and what's the best way to sort them. And I actually was looking at Mossback, and he had his common ones. Well, boy, this one is already labeled 82, 110, 130, 180. All of these are already put together. Greater than 10, greater than 100. Older resistors, new old stock resistors. These are capacitors here, the old-fashioned mica capacitors here, and yes, newer capacitors. But I really was looking at the resistors here because these are already done for me, and I really can go through now and just add my resistors to this collection. They're all nicely typed up here. I thought this was pretty cool. A couple of the handles have broken off, not a big deal. Once again, this was $6. And resistors, yes, you have to check them, especially the older ones, but a lot of these are definitely newer resistors. Even in the casing right here, they're ready to go. These are 68 ohms to 100 ohms, and I'm really going to be in good shape when I start really getting into the restoring of the radios here. So I have capacitors, I have resistors, I have a lot of parts I probably don't even know what they are, and I'm going to really be looking forward to doing this. I'm going to pause for a second. As I mentioned, I went to a consignment sale. Now, in our area, there's a group that helps people downsize or does estate auctions. They post all the items on Facebook, and there's two different ones. There's one that allows you just to, they give you a price and you say, yes, I want it, and they tell you what day you can come pick it up. Or there's another one that actually has a bidding process, but you know ahead of time that one, if you're the winning bid, you've already registered a credit card, and two, they've told you already that you have to come at a certain time on a certain day to pick it up or you lose it. One of the people that I've bought a few things from in the past had an estate sale, and I said, you know, I bet these people had some old radios. And I said, what radio, do you have any radios? She goes, yes. She goes, I have one, but it's a little bit expensive. And I go, what is it? She goes, it's a transoceanic. And this is the transoceanic 3000. And I go, she goes, but it's in great shape. And I had a friend of mine who collects these. And I said, hey, what price? And he goes, well, go over and see what it's like. He said, there's a couple things you look at. First of all, on the transoceanic, which is an all transistor, this came out in 1963, and this handle, which you never hold it by, comes up and has the antenna in it. He said the first thing you do is make sure the antenna is not bent. Make sure this works, it's not broken off. And I said, yep, okay, that's good. And so the next thing you want to look at is this release here. And once you push that open, this case comes down, and you want to look at the condition of everything. And I said, well, this is in great condition here. Everything seems to function. This turns, the dial on the side turns, everything works well. So he said, that's the second thing. Third thing is you pull out this little paper table here. And this is a table, give you a little bit of a close-up there. And as you look through it, it tells you what all the different bands are and the types of things. And even in the back here, there's some space where you can write down certain things. This was in excellent condition and still pulled out. And so, he said that's another thing to look for. And the final thing you want to look at, well, there's two other things you want to look at. One, did they come with the owner's manual and the paperwork? And the answer is no on this one. So that didn't have that. But he did say, you can get that, you can download it, but it's nice to have the original one and the original schematic. It says, that's online. What this did have is, this is a 3000-1, and the -1 is, it had an AC adapter. And they actually had the Zenith AC adapter still for it. So this is kind of a neat thing. And not everybody still has the original adapter. He said the final thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the unit around and look at the back. And he said, one, look at the back here, and each of the original stickers, the inspected by the cabinet is in here. And he said the other thing you want to look at is pop out this. This is the battery pack. And what he really wants you to do is make sure that the batteries weren't left in here and leaked all over the place. Well, this thing is clean as a whistle, and the battery pack has never been used. They always use the AC adapter. Now, going forward, he says when you use this, you really want to put batteries in this. The batteries will last a long time because you don't want to trust the voltage irregularities on modern wall warts. And if you do use a wall wart, even though this is 12 volts, he said use the 9 volt, works fine. These use a series of transistors here, and each of the transistors has a socket. Now, the downside on this is it turns on, but you really can't hear anything. So he said, well, there's 3 things you're going to do right away. He said, take each of the transistors out, take a little deoxit, clean it off, put them in and out of those sockets to make sure those are sockets. See if that fixes it. He said the second thing would be is to come over to his house, and we'll pull each of these transistors, plug them into his working unit, and see if his unit is still working, or test these transistors. Sometimes they can get the silver mica disease. Test the transistors, and if the transistors are fine, then the electrolytics need to be replaced. He says that's a little bit more in depth. These radios were really built to last, However, like anything else, there are electrolytics in here, and he said, you know, you need to go through and look at the YouTube videos in order to get these things replaced and put out. So this will be a future project. This is going to be way on the back burner for a while, but we'll get to it. The final thing I forgot was in the auction. The auction that I went to, let's see, there we go. One of the things that came up is an MFJ 259B SWR meter. Now, I actually have one of these. I have a different one, but this one came here. It had the original manuals, the original box, has a bunch of adapters, and had the batteries in it. It turned on. It is in absolutely pristine condition here. It is 5 years old. There's a little sticker on the back of it here. I turned it on, works fine. So I picked this up at the auction for $60. Now, these go for about $220, $230 new. And at Hamfest, these go for $100 easy. So I am going to either keep this as a spare, which I probably won't do, or take it to the next Hamfest, or take it to our ham club and find some new hand that wants to look at this. And I'll probably be able to sell this for, you know, 120 easily. And if I do that, then I'll just put that money, think about it, then I got everything else here pretty much for free. If I get 120 for it, I'll get everything else for free. So those are my big purchases of the week. Next, I will be working on several items to get my test gear up and running. We are going to be working on a capacitor checker to show the leakage. I want one of those. I have one of those. I just got to redo it. I have a tube tester. Actually, I have two tube testers. The first one we're going to do is a pretty simple one, an ICO one. I have a signal tracer and two frequency generators that we're going to be working on. So those will be my next couple of projects, and I'm going to detail those from beginning to end. We're going to do a checkout video, then we're going to do where I do the background, how I get, you know, either the Bamba or other things, some of the other areas I look at when I'm restoring them, where I got the parts from, putting the parts in, of course testing it, calibrating it, and getting it up on the bench. So for now, that's all I have. 73s, and have a great week.